This weekend, Jon Favreau's photorealistic take on The Lion King roars into theaters. So today we're going to stop and rank all 4 Lion King films from the worst to the best. Hi, my name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies way too much. With that in mind, I brought in a special guest to talk The Lion King. She's a YouTuber, she's a podcaster, she's a Rotten Tomatoes certified critic, and she's an expert in Disney and animation. Rachel, where can we find you on YouTube and in the world of podcasts?
Hi, Sean. Thanks so much for having me on your channel. And you can find me at Rachel's Reviews, all over social media, iTunes, YouTube, but also at the Hallmarkies podcast. So we have a ton of fun.
Thank you so much for joining us. And guys, if you don't know this, over on Rachel's channel, we posted a video where we talk about remakes. We also did a video where we kind of dove a little bit deeper into The Lion King 2019. That's over on her channel. Go ahead and join the conversation. Love to have you. As we go into this specific ranking, what I did was I took my ranking, Rachel's ranking, and then the Rotten Tomatoes ranking, averaged them together. That's the list we're looking at, and we'll see how we agree and disagree with that meta list that we made. With that said, let's get started. Coming in last place is The Lion King 1.5. Rachel, what is your take on The Lion King 1.5?
Yeah, so The Lion King 1.5 is sort of Timon's movie. It tries to do quite a bit, and maybe that's part of the problem. It's kind of Timon's backstory, you get to meet his family, but then it's also like super meta, where they have them kind of Mystery Science 3000.
Yeah.
And the supposedly Timon and Pumbaa were kind of part of everything that happened in the original Lion King. And so you see them at the Circle of Life sequence, and you see them throughout. So there's it's sort of weird, but kind of creative in a weird way. It's a nutty little movie.
Yeah, for me, I watched this for the first time yesterday, and like my thought was, this isn't really even a movie. Yeah. This feels like 4 episodes of Timon and Pumbaa, the TV show, crammed together. And if it was that, if I walked in on my kids watching Timon and Pumbaa, the TV show, and this was 4 episodes, I'd be like, that's a pretty clever 4 episodes. That's kind of funny. But the actual concept of like, no, this really happened, that we're going to seriously tell his backstory while doing meta humor, while suggesting that actually they were there for everything that happened in The Lion King. I feel it's it's blatantly disrespectful to the original film to be like, and then he had gas, and that's why they were like kneeling. Like, come on, like it might have gotten a chuckle out of me, but just because I chuckle doesn't mean it's a good joke, and it doesn't mean it certainly doesn't add to the mythology in a way that I appreciate. And so it's something that, like, as an experiment, as kind of a concept that's out there, it's mildly amusing. I absolutely did laugh at points in time, but as an actual movie that's suggested to be in the continuity, like, I hate that concept, and it does not feel like an actual film itself.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. I mean, I call them the cheap quills that Disney did during this time period. This is actually, I would say, one of the better. Both of these Lion King ones are one of the better of these. The animation, at least, is pretty fun, and I don't know, like they tried a lot. At least it wasn't just bland, but they were trying things. But yeah, it didn't really work.
So of these 4 movies, where did you have this one ranked?
This is my bottom.
This is my bottom as well. Rotten Tomatoes has this at number 2. It's at like 75-80% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is
fresh.
Right, certified fresh. Like, whoa, this movie is what you certified fresh. That was kind of interesting to me.
I think there was just like a Lion King drought.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to put words in the mouths of these critics, but yeah, I think maybe that was part of maybe the novelty of having Lion King back. I don't know, but yeah, that was kind of surprising to me.
Place is The Lion King 2. I'll kick this one off. I actually watched this for the first time just a couple days ago with my kids, and it was kind of a weird experience because on a story level, the story, I think, works far better than I was expecting. Like, there's actually some really good themes, emotions inside of it with what they were going for. And then at the same time, I mean, some of the animation here, I just couldn't believe that, like, really? That's what you just did? And then likewise, none of the songs popped with me. And for having a story that I thought was fresh and original, some of the way they structured the story and the way they did the storytelling felt a little bit too much like they're just trying to rehash the original. So it's kind of a little bit of an odd mix of things where I was like, wow, this is actually pretty good. And wow, this is really not good. How about you? What's your take on this one?
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree. I think that the animation is rough. It's not great. It's it's a direct to video movie, and they were super lazy with these cheap ghouls as far as animation goes. And yeah, I mean, I do disagree about the music. I think particularly "He Lives in You" is such a beautiful song, and I really like that. At the beginning. So I think there's some nice songs, nice musical moments, and it's basically Romeo and Juliet story, which is fun. So yeah, it's watchable, but it's not great.
Yeah. And maybe if, a lot of times for me, whenever I hear kind of Disney music for the first time, it doesn't normally pop with me. And so hearing it essentially for the first time could be part of the reason why I was like, okay, these ones aren't as memorable as the ones that I've been listening to for the last 25 years. So that's not a fair comparison, but I remember in that intro sequence, and they're kind of mirroring the intro to The Lion King, and they do the wide shot of all the animals, which in the original is this just incredible, gorgeous shot. And then they do it in this one, and they do this wide shot, and you see 100 animals, and 2 of them are moving, and you're like, wait, you barely even animated this. Like, why did you attempt a shot like this if you can't animate it? Because you just show how low your budget is when you do something like that.
Yeah, and there's times when the outlining and the rendering just looks so bad. It's not great.
Yeah, I was... It's one of those ones where you don't always remember how bad animation could be in the past if you're so used to watching these big budget animated films, the CGI and everything, and then you see direct to video with some of your favorite characters, and you're like, oh wow, like that's right. That's what some of this stuff looked like back then. But yeah, at the heart of it, I thought that what they did with some of the characters here, what's the name of Scar's son again?
Kuvo.
The whole plot line with him and his mother and having like a moment where he's rejected by everyone. I was like, that's actually some pretty powerful stuff. Like I was not really expecting this to go to a place like that. And I thought they handled it pretty well. And kind of, as you kind of moved into the third act, it kind of tied things together and had a little bit of something to say. And I was like, that's actually working pretty well for what they're going for.
Yeah, I don't know if it completely vibes with Simba's character.
Right.
That he would be such a such a jerk. You think he would be, with having lived the Kuna Matata lifestyle as long as he did, he'd be a little bit less terrible.
Yeah, and that's what this movie felt like to me, of like, if they decided to make this a actual sequel in the theater, and so then they like, let's do the full script treatment on it, let's do the full animation, I think there's a version of this movie that could have been really, really good. But when you're doing the cheapo version, as you said, all the corners you got to cut. You don't have as much time on the script. You don't get as good of a script writer, in which case I think it kind of hurt a little bit. Where do you have this one ranked for you?
I went back and forth, but I ended up putting this at number 2 because I would just rather watch a new story than a shot-for-shot remake.
So I had this one at number 3 for me. And Rotten Tomatoes has this one at number 4. It's like a 40% on Rotten Tomatoes. So the critics were not particularly big fans of this one in general. Our runner-up is The Lion King 2019. Rachel, what is your take on this film? I know the two of us, pretty different takes.
Yeah, so I think if you enjoy the photorealism, if that's interesting and exciting to you, then you'll enjoy this film. For me, I never quite bought that these photorealistic animals were actually talking or actually singing. And so I was just not as immersed in the story. And the story is just, they just took no risk at all. And so it just ended up feeling very bland to me. And certain scenes, like particularly Be Prepared, was just like watching a business meeting of lions. It wasn't like watching Be Prepared. And there was just no gravitas to it to me, aside from the fact that, oh, it's photorealistic. And that's just not enough for me. So I didn't really enjoy it.
Yeah, and it's a weird one for me because I hear everything you say, and it's not like I heard it and went, no, let me try and convince you. Like, it's a film that you either watch it and you either connect with it or you don't. For me, the novelty, the nostalgia, I was able to connect just enough. While at the same time, even what you're saying about the animals, I never really bought that they were saying this stuff. I was like, yeah, I felt that too. It felt to me like a Disney nature film, except in Disney nature, you've got like Ed Helms doing narration for Steve the Penguin or whatever. When here, where you had, voice actors with the jaw moving, but I never really fully 100% bought into the fact that lion was talking to me. I never bought into that. And so it always felt like it was a bit at arm's length as we're seeing this, technological achievement with a Lion King skin on top of it.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. And so just as if that's enough to excite you, then that's fine. I totally understand that. It just wasn't for me.
Right. And it's an interesting film in that, like, it is it's such a direct translation where they didn't add much of anything into it. And so some people are going to love that because they didn't mess with the Lion King at all. And other people are going to be like, why did we do this? Like, what's the point of this?
Yeah. And it just felt emotionally flat. And so I think if I had bought into it emotionally, then I would have been more okay with that, going beat for beat. But because I didn't get invested in the characters, because it didn't feel like them saying these things and doing these things, it just fell flat for me.
Yeah. And I'm very interested to see how this movie is taken by audiences. At the time we're recording this, it's a few days before it's released to the general public, and I just have no clue what to expect. If the audiences are going to connect with the nostalgia of it, or if a bunch of people are going to be like, wow, it's the Lion King, but I just don't feel anything. There's no energy to it. I have no clue, because it just feels like even critics are so torn on it. And there were some guys on Twitter just tearing it to shreds as like, I love Jon Favreau, but like, I can't believe that he made such a lifeless movie, referring to it as the Gus Van Sant Psycho, or the animated version of Gus Van Sant Psycho. And then other people like John Campea loved it. Like, he was glowing. He said that he was crying throughout the entire movie as a grown man. And so I'm very interested to see how people fall in this one. And be sure everyone tell us down below in the comment section, what's your take on it? Let's keep it respectful, but let's keep it lively too. But coming in first place is the original The Lion King. So for me, this might be my favorite animated film of all time. It's got memorable songs. It came out at just the right time in my life, or the age. I was like the perfect age to be the target audience for this film when it came out. And so, and I have also many nostalgic memories of seeing it at a drive-in theater and things like that. So it's been a film that, it's always been there with me. And then as soon as I had kids and started playing it for them, you kind of watch some of these movies differently when they have kind of father-son dynamics inside of them. So it's kind of touched me differently as I've grown older. The songs, I think, here are some of the best that Disney's ever done, along with all of the Disney brands. I was like, I had a blessed childhood, because the Little Mermaid through the Lion King were like my years of being the target audience, and that's a great little run. And so this being a movie that falls exactly into that. Rachel, how about you, as someone also that is the same age as me?
Yeah, we are exactly the same age. So so it definitely had a huge impact on me, and I think it holds up really well. It's such a moving story about somebody who feels like this is all the most horrible thing that could have happened with losing his father, that was his fault, and he has to live with those pain, and he's been manipulated by this sociopath of Scar, and him coming to forgive himself, realize that it wasn't his fault, and return to become the king that he's truly meant to be, is such a moving, wonderful journey. And I think the songs are so catchy. They were really trying for a pop aesthetic, pop feel, and so each of these songs, like, you don't even remember the verses, unlike, say, Beauty and the Beast, where I think you do remember those verses. It's all about the hook of that chorus, that you don't even care what else they're saying in Circle of Life. You just Circle of Life, and that makes it really great and really fun and memorable. And I think that Scar is top 5 Disney villains for sure. He has no remorse, no guilt, no conflicting feelings. He's just like dripping with disdain. I think him and Maleficent are the most in that way, as far as Disney villains that are just so, like, they think they're so much better than everybody else and so much smarter, and in some ways they are
right
smarter than everybody else. And so be prepared with a little totalitarian hyenas is so great. And it was one of the first Disney movies to really puff out the voice cast the way they did. I mean,
yes,
someone like Whoopi Goldberg playing a very, pretty small role in one of the hyenas. It's just, of course, they had celebrity voices in the past, but this was just on a different scale. And what's really cool too, as far as the history of Disney, is that this was this was the B project, or Pocahontas was the A project that got your Alan Menkins and your prestige animators and your things like that. And this was done at the Florida office sites, and it was just kind of I say it's the Bad News Bears of Disney. Yeah, this is the one that that became the incredible hit, and so I think it has that there's a little bit of that feel to it. It's just a little bit different. It's a little it was a little bit of a change of pace for Disney, and I don't know, I love it. I think it's so moving when he realizes that and he has that conversation with his dad, and he realizes that he can forgive himself. I think it's very moving.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, we had this conversation on Twitter with someone where they said that I Just Can't Wait to Be King seems like a pointless song inside of the movie that doesn't need to be there. And we both chimed in that's like the center of the movie. Like, it's his arc is him as a character is like he can't wait to be king because he doesn't understand responsibility. And the whole movie's about him learning where to take responsibility, where to forgive himself. Like, that's like it's central to it. Like, it's a counterbalance to, you have I Can't Wait to Be King, where he doesn't understand responsibility, and then a Hakuna Matata, throwing away responsibility. And then why it's powerful is because he accepts responsibility and owns all of that stuff. Like, that's why the movie is for a bunch of us just resonates and has that emotion to it that hits so heavily in the end of the film.
Yeah, and I can understand why that song isn't everybody's favorite, because it's very boy bandy.
Yeah,
it's very but I think for as far as the story, I think it really works. And a lot of people are kind of critical as adults now, like Hakuna Matata is so lame. I'm like, that song is for kids. It absolutely is for kids. Kids love it. They crack up. They think it's hilarious, and so I have no problem. I have no problem having a song that's just there for 10 or 8 kids. It's fine.
Right, and both of those songs, they're not necessarily as a song for me, but as a piece of the film that's a musical, and musical numbers are supposed to help us see the character's inner thoughts and feelings and progress the character arc. Both of them are so pivotal to the movie as a whole. But even beyond, we haven't even touched on the fact, Hans Zimmer's fantastic score to the film. You talk about the pop songs inside of it, but the score itself, is just a powerhouse. And you go back, today you say, oh yeah, Hans Zimmer scored The Lion King. Hans Zimmer today is the premier guy. Hans Zimmer 25 years ago, this is where Hans Zimmer came from.
This in Prince of Egypt really, kind of catapulted.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, there's so many little details like that of just stuff that just are really powerful about, as you talked about, the backstory of where it came from, and just it all kind of came together as this Shakespeare for kids. Just a really good film that has big emotions, and it has the powerful music. It touches on all the levels. And
one of the best introductory scenes in all of movies. When it just boom, it gets you, and they were so brilliant as far as, because the original trailer was just that 4 minutes that they put for Aladdin. And there's quotes from the different animators where we don't even know if we can live up to this. We put it out there, oh my gosh,
right?
And so it was brilliant, and it totally paid off, and it's beautifully animated, absolutely gorgeous.
And so that's for me why very easily it's number 1. Remember to go check out that video of Rachel and I discussing remakes right over there. Be sure to leave a comment saying that I sent you. Thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies too much.